What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reacting to why are Americans so obsessed with ice cubes. I saw this video and I was like, what can you possibly be obsessed about in ice cubes? Just water that turned ice. Let us see what this video is all about. If this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe, consider to like the video, also drop your comments and suggest more videos for me to react to, and let us react to why Americans are so obsessed with ice cubes.
First things that pilgrims would have seen upon reaching present-day America would have been water on the rocks. It seems only appropriate then that water on the rocks has also become a popular American drink. And I'm not talking about seaweed-infested water from New England, I'm talking about water served with ice. Of course, I use the example of water to service a really great pun. But honestly, Americans put ice in almost everything, from cocktails to mocktails, from coffee to tea. They even sell bags of it at the petrol station. And to people in my homeland of Britain, where frozen water is used far more sparingly, America's ice cube culture can at times seem like an obsession. So, is it? And why do Americans insist on bulking up their liquids with more liquids, albeit solid ones?
Exactly.
Well, as a British person myself who moved to the United States, such questions have been at the forefront of my mind this summer, not least because my wife and I recently got an ice making machine. Shut up, it's great. And if you would like this machine of a YouTube channel to reach 1 million subscribers and you haven't yet become one yourself, do that now. In the meantime, here are some of the actual reasons that Americans love their ice, some of which might surprise you. And before I skate on thin ice with my British subscribers, I want to start this deep dive by addressing a popular misconception among Americans, that European countries don't themselves have ice cubes. This, of course, is completely and utterly a little bit false. In Britain, for example, not only do many households have trays for creating them, but Brits, albeit to a lesser extent than Americans, do consume iced tea and the like. But definitely not as much as as hot tea. The reason for this misconception appears to be
There's something I've actually noticed about Americans is many of them. I don't want to be unfair to some other guys, but I'll just say some of them, to be fair. Some of them don't know that any other thing exists outside the United States of America. And it is kind of, not nice. It's not a nice thing. Read, explore, travel. I mean, geography. What do you do in geography and stuff? But yeah, I just wanted to let that out.
That ice water is not typically served in UK restaurants unless one specifically asks for it. And even then you only get about 1 or 2 ice cubes. In the US, most restaurants will serve it by default, with waitstaff frequently ensuring that your glass remains topped up. In other words, it's not that Britain eschews ice cubing altogether, it's just that Americans take it to another level. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Lawrence, this video should have been over in 20 seconds. The answer is simple. Americans just like to be different. And while that seems to be the default perception toward most things America, I've read enough to know that this belief doesn't always hold water. Pun intended. In other words, ice cube fanaticism, much like American vocabulary, is not so much a product of American hysteria, but American history. You see, America's ice fixation in this, the era of refrigeration, owes much to the century that preceded it. In 1800, when the US was still young enough to be covered under its parents' healthcare plan, one American in particular came up with a revolutionary idea: ice harvesting. This was where icemen would cut huge blocks of ice from lakes and rivers for the express purpose of using them for refrigeration. They were sort of like ice cubes, but for giants. In fact, the blocks weighed up to 300 pounds, which is roughly equal to 3 large dogs, or The Undertaker. Because this was during a time when icemen didn't have a direct line to Charles Xavier, they had to enlist horses to transport the ice, which would then be stored in special ice houses from where it could be exported. And why am I telling you this in 2024? Because for the next century and a half, ice harvesting became a massive industry in the United States. It was the brainchild of Bostonian businessman Frederick Tudor, who would later be dubbed the Ice King, despite Boston only recently saying it didn't want a monarch. Tudor made an absolute fortune selling to other countries ice harvested in New England, further adding substance to my water on the rocks joke from earlier. In fact, by the 1880s, ice was America's second largest export after cotton. Among the beneficiaries were Cuba, India, England, and most notably Norway, which subsequently began its own ice harvesting industry. And of course, ice harvesting gradually benefited American society. Indeed, it was known as ice harvesting because ice was literally considered a crop. At first, this crop would be distributed to the wealthy who would use it to preserve meat and beverages, something that was of particular importance during those hot summer months. But as the century wore on, ice was made available to businesses up and down the country. It revolutionized various food markets because it meant that meat, fish, and vegetables could be more easily stored and transported without rotting. Moreover, by the 1860s, when Tudor was busy seeking revenge against his barber, 2/3 of homes in Boston and New York received ice deliveries on the daily. America presumably had so much ice that the only natural next step was to start putting it in drinks. Don't believe me? Well, American author Mark Twain, who was obsessed with technological invention, not only himself confirmed it, but cited it as a uniquely American practice. I think that there is only one thing that can be called by the wide name American. That is the national devotion to ice water. That sounded exactly like him. Like Twain, ice harvesting continued on into the 20th century, along with ice cubes. Indeed, it was during the Great Depression that America gave us the first flexible ice tray. Today, of course, these are normally made of plastic, but back then, metal trays were all the rage. Around the same time, General Electric rolled out the so-called monitor-top refrigerator, the world's first mass-produced residential fridge. And the rise of the personal refrigerator soon led to the mass production of its cousin, the freezer. By 1948, around 90% of American homes were equipped with a fridge. Compare this to Britain, still reeling from the economic effects of World War II, where only 2% of homes could say the same. And the refrigeration boom ultimately meant two things. Number one, America's love of ice cubes had now reached a level of convenience that would have made Mark Twain do this with his face. And number two, by the middle of the 20th century, the ice harvesting industry, which had then existed for 85% of US history, died out overnight. In doing so, it left behind a legacy still felt by the global food industry today. But it also played a central role in establishing America's warm relationship with ice. Okay, history schmistery, you might be thinking, but why are Americans still doing this in 2024? Can't they just cool it? Well, that's exactly what they are doing. You see, just as British winters don't deliver nearly as much ice as those of the northern United States, British summers are not nearly as hot. So, back when I heroically traversed the Rockies in 99-degree heat, anything less than ice water would have been an insult. And when I say I traversed the Rockies, I meant that I walked up a hill in Utah. The point is, the cult of Ice Cube has persisted in America partially because its devotees derive practical use from it. Of course, as heat waves become more common in the UK, might the same thing happen there? After all, the UK did eventually get on board with refrigerators, with that 2% figure rising to 97% in the years since. To me, this seems unlikely. Not only is that like comparing apples and oranges, but UK fridges and freezers are typically much smaller than those in America. In other words, not every British family has the real estate to prioritise ice cubes, especially when Feast ice creams exist. In America, not only do larger units mean more space for ice trays, but some models even have an ice cube dispenser, as I found at my previous address. And some of my more observant subscribers might be thinking, wait a minute, what happened to the big fridge that came with your house? We're not 5 people, it had to go. Which is why we got a smaller fridge and an ice making machine. However, all of this talk of 4-sided objects got me thinking. Perhaps the ultimate reason that Americans love ice cubes is that Americans also have a broader love of rectangles. Under a flag that boasts more rectangles than, say, 99% of all of the countries in the world, in a country of rectangular counties, some of which form rectangular panhandles or knitted quilts. Or
You know what? That is actually true. It's like someone obsessed really drew them out. I thought those patterns were not realistic, and that is crazy.
The utilization of land in America as illustrated by Forbes. In cities of rectangular neighborhoods in which rectangles live side by side in total harmony, there are rectangular lawns containing circular fire pits for safety reasons, but in the rectangular houses, there are rectangular kitchens with their rectangular freezers, with rectangular trays, with smaller rectangular trays that make rectangular ice. And if you haven't seen my video on 6 food dishes I only discovered after moving to America, you'll do that next. Until the next video, goodbye.
Okay, so that's a very interesting video, to be honest. The last point about the rectangles actually is more relevant to me, I guess, because it's an obsession. And the way, even if you look at the map, just like he said, the map is just so rectangular, and that Yeah, that's what makes more sense to me, to be honest. The thing about ice cubes and weather is that, for example, I used to live in Cyprus, and in Cyprus, because it gets really hot during summer. In fact, sometimes you don't even need to ask; they just bring ice cubes to you. And sometimes you ask, but like they bring it in like a big bowl, so you can ask for more, and it's just unlimited, as much as you want. But in the UK, it's more like no one even expects you to ask for ice cubes. So I think the weather is a very, 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 very big factor, and that's probably why it's still widely used in the US, and it looks like an obsession. I don't think it's an obsession. I just think, yeah, it's just because of the weather. And yeah, good. The last point is still boggling my mind. I'm going to read more about why the states are rectangular and stuff like that, but it's more effective than some other places where you have to fight for, oh no, this part is my land, this part is for me. No, but when the rectangle is there, yeah, that's it. It's clearly there. I like that. I prefer that. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and till we see you next time. Peace out.